do builders like us make a dramatic difference in the lives of our students in spite of all the obstacles we face? How do you keep your vision for your school from being held hostage by resistant teachers, uncooperative parents, ridiculous district policies, or lack of time, money, or resources? If you're facing those challenges right now, here's where you'll find the answers, strategies, and actionable tips you need to overcome any obstacle you face. You don't have to wait to make a difference in the lives of the people you serve. You can turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Let's get started. Hey Builders, welcome to this very special bonus episode of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robin Jackson, and today I want to share with you another success story. You see, from time to time, when I run across a builder who is taking all of the concepts and strategies that we talk about right here on this podcast, and they apply it successfully to their own schools, well, I want to share their story with you. And today is no different. I'd like to introduce you to Tosha-Lyn Francis. She's a middle school principal in New York, and she has an incredible success story about how she navigated her school safely through the recent quarantine teaching and pandemic and was able to not only sustain her school, but to grow her school. And she did it by using some of the strategies that you've been learning right here on this podcast. I can't wait for you to hear her story, to be inspired by what she's doing, and to take away a few nuggets that you may be able to use in your own school. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Tosha-Lyn. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I am here with an extraordinary principal. Her name is Tosha-Lyn, and I first met her at Builders Lab a couple of years ago, and she's got an extraordinary story about how she developed a clean vision for her school and how that has anchored her school during the COVID crisis. So, Tosha-Lyn, welcome. Thank you for being here today. And I can't wait to share your success story with others. So why don't we start with before you got to Builders Lab? Tell me about your school. You've been a principal since 2018, I think.
That's right. July of 2018. At exactly 2 years now into this work. And when I became a principal, I stepped into my school, and my school had completely bottomed out. It's a middle school in New York City. It was, the superintendent's office had been thinking about closing the school, actually. However, I interviewed for the position and they said, hey, let's try this. So I was definitely open to working with this school. And especially because, in my view, the school did not match the community. The school had a lot of discipline issues. There had been a lot of violence, a lot of fighting, destruction of property. I mean, it was just crazy. The children were running the building, and literally and figuratively, like literally running around the building from the stories that I've heard. Wow. And, I came in, and at that point, when I'd come into the school, I'd already been following your podcasts at that point. And I heard you talk about Builders Lab. And I said, okay, maybe I need to go to Builders Lab in January. That was the first Builders Lab that I'd heard you announcing at that stage. But I just could not leave the building. It was not the time. There were so many things to kind of pull together. The staff that I had, the team I had, these were teachers who were already there. The students, again, they were all over the place. We'd begun the process of restoring order. We were reducing the violent incidents and so forth. But I was really anxious for us to get to restoring learning. However, it wasn't the time yet. I just had to restore order during that first year. So by the time we got to the end of the school year, I was firmly decided that, okay, I'm going to Builders Lab. So much so that our executive superintendent had actually planned a professional development during the same days as your Builders Lab. And I wrote to him. I wouldn't usually do this. I mean, I'm a new principal, but I wrote to him. I said, I'm sorry, I've already invested in this PD. You know, I have to go to this. And he was like, no problem. That's fine.
Wow.
So,
and you were a first year principal. This was only your first year ever being a principal.
Exactly. My first year as a principal, period. So as I went to Builders Lab, I to be honest, I was like expecting, okay, I'm going to get this plan. I'm going to come back, enforce the plan, and the school's going to be perfect. But my school, again, was just so broken. I mean, you use the metaphor of buildership, where buildership really resonated with me because we just needed to completely rebuild, just everything had been already reduced to the studs. If you think of a house being remodeled or being renovated. So when I came to Builders Lab, you spent the first day, you know, really talking a lot about the vision, the mission, the core values. And, you know, which is similar to what you talk about in the podcast. But at Builders Lab, you know, you brought a whole new light to it because there were the tools that you have there. You gave a deeper explanation regarding the vision. And I began to work on the vision. And then you sat with me as we were working on the vision. And at first, I think I was just trying to recycle a vision statement that I'd created when I thought that I was going to be the principal of a high school. However, the vision statement, as we worked through it, it wasn't coming together. It wasn't working, you know, and you said to me, you know, this is not exciting you. You're not excited. I don't see any light. I don't see any spark. You know, this is not exciting you. What's going on? And I had to really recognize that you would use a metaphor of a trapeze or an analogy of a trapeze artist going from one bar to the next bar. And I realized I had to let go of that vision statement that I had wordsmithed to death. It was a beautiful statement, but it just did not fit. I don't know what school it fit, but it didn't fit my school.
I remember that. I mean, we sat down for a while to work on that, and you kept like changing it, and it was wordsmithing, but the light was just not on in your eyes. Mm-hmm. And then after that day, you know, the rest of the day you were thinking about it. You went to dinner that night, you thought about it. And the next morning, tell everybody what happened when you came back the next morning.
Right. So the next morning when I realized that, okay, you know what, I have it. Like it, and it was so simple. I guess I just thought it had to be this prettied up vision statement, but I just kept remembering the tools that you had provided, the guidance and the advice that you provided, that it had to be right from my school. It had to be about my school. And I was able to get it. I was able to pull it together. I shared it with you. We're like, okay, yep, we have this. All right. So if this is it, you asked me if it excites me. I said, yes, this excites me. This is something that I can get up in the morning each day and go to work and be excited about. And, you know, so I realized also at the end of Builders Lab that it was the floor of the school. It was the foundation that we needed in rebuilding my school, and that we really couldn't go anywhere else. Anything else that I would try to do would have just been window dressing, putting curtains on a house that has no foundation. You know, you can't. So
what happened? You took that vision statement, you went back to your school. What did you do next?
So I launched it. That was the very first conversation that I had with my staff. Actually, that happened the very next day. After Builders Lab was over, I came back to New York, and I had already planned a professional development session for my staff. And I introduced it in that staff meeting where I said, listen, and it all made sense, because the staff meeting was about, or the professional learning session rather, was focused on helping the teachers to unpack standards, develop building blocks, develop learning targets. And my vision statement was simply every student will meet and exceed New York State standards, period. And so I began that professional learning session by expressing that to the staff, where I said, listen, this is about 100% of the students. We are not going to play any games talking about, okay, 10% increase or at the time, our school was at 5% for proficiency in math, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous. 5% proficiency in math. And I said to the staff, you know, in most schools, they would say, okay, we are going to increase our number by 50%. That would put us at 10% proficiency. So, you know, or even to say, oh, we're going to increase it by 100%. Sorry, that would put us at 10% proficiency. I said, no, that's not good enough to have 90% of our kids who are not meeting standards, and we're not even trying. So I cast the vision to the staff, and I made it very clear that this has to be something that everybody has to get behind. And, you know, the work that we're going to do in this session now will really help us to move forward. And that really seemed to excite the staff. They were like, okay, you're giving us this challenge. All right, challenge on. You know, I'll accept the challenge. And the person who we invited to do this session for us, she also embraced that. And that just gave her something to work with, knowing that this is our vision and it is clear. And then as we went into September, we continued to repeat and rehearse the vision. I took the teachers through exercises where the teachers created the mission statement for the school, and the mission statement built on the vision statement, and like everything just was coming together beautifully. So then all of our work was just focused on every student meeting and exceeding state standards, and making sure that everyone was clear also that standards, not the same as standardized testing. And by making that clear distinction, that really helped. First of all, it helped the teachers to feel like, okay, I know what we're working toward. It also gave some clarity around the fact that that whether or not a student is doing well is not about a gut check, but it's about, you know, something that is grounded in the next generation standards, which is those are the standards that we follow.
Did you face any pushback? Were there any teachers who said, you know, we're only at 5% now. How are we going to get to 100%?
You know, I didn't get that. I got the looks, but I think because there were enough teachers who verbally expressed that, yes, this is what we should be doing. This is why we're here. This is why I came into teaching. I think that may have silenced those who would have felt like, well, no, we can't do that. That's just not possible. And I'm not about silencing people, but I do think that the enthusiasm of most of the staff was just so infectious that even for those who just didn't believe, they didn't express it. But the belief though came through in the actions of now so many of my staff members, where we realized, and we talked about the fact that in order to be a school where 100% of the students meet the standards, especially from where they are, what is it that we have to do differently as a school in order to make this work? So then teachers were staying later, or you'll hear about, well, I just text this mother, and you know, from teachers who may not have always given out their cell phone numbers. And I didn't require people to do that, but that was just something that teachers were beginning to do voluntarily, because they realized that with this one parent here, the best way for me to get the best out of the child was to be able to have text conversations with the parent. You know, being able to figure out that there are certain students who I just need to sit down next to the child. I can teach from sitting next to this particular child because that's what this child needed. You know, I think that the point that I'm making is just that we found that more and more staff members, my guidance counselors, my guidance team was amazing. Everyone was beginning to try to figure out, what does this individual child need in order to be able to meet and exceed state standards? Because as I kept repeating to everyone, every student means every student. There are no buts, there are no ifs, there are no ands, no exceptions. Every student.
If you had to embrace a vision, if you had settled on a vision that you weren't excited about, I just don't know how that could happen. I think one of the reasons why so many teachers were so quick to jump on was that they saw your excitement. They saw your conviction behind that vision too. So I'm really glad that we waited and pushed until you got something that you were excited about. Because I can't imagine that you would have been able to present a vision that bold without pushback if you didn't believe in the vision yourself. I think people picked up from you how convicted you were, and that gave them hope. It gave them, well, maybe we can do it because she really believes in it.
Right. I really do believe that it's my belief. Like, I had to go out ahead. I had to, in order to help the staff understand that, I believe that it's possible. And I wouldn't go out on a limb like this, especially as a new principal. Usually when you're new to a position, you will hide, you will go under the radar, you'll play it safe because you're looking for, self-preservation. But my belief is that, no, I have to go bold. And I believe that this can work, and I believe that this can happen. And there were enough staff members who also saw that, as well as parents, because the reputation of my school was one that just was not, it's those who knew of my school, that reputation was not a good one. Right. My school is on the 3rd floor of a building where we share the building with an elementary school. The elementary school is on the 1st and 2nd floors. Wow. And from hearing me talk about the vision, from hearing me talk about the school and talk about what I see the school can be, the parents, the 5th grade parents who are in the elementary school, more and more of them have been coming to me and saying, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying. I believe, I trust you, and I'm going to send my child to your school. We have at least 6 other middle schools within a 2-mile radius of our school. But the fact that parents are also catching that vision, and they see that we really believe it. I really appreciate being able to work through it and hearing how you really emphasize the importance of that vision statement being also one that we believe in, and also a simplified one, a simple vision. It's not simplistic, but it has to be simple. It has to be memorable. It can't be this long vision statement where I have to look for a paper to read off the vision. I have to be able to say it from memory. I have to know it. And the staff needs to know it and be able to recite it and be able to communicate it to parents. And then we need parents to be able to hear it and understand it and understand what we're doing for their children and why we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Okay, so you've done that. You've got the vision there. Everybody's so excited. And then right in the middle of the year where you're launching this,
right,
comes COVID-19. And I think a lot of people would have said, well, this year is a wash. Maybe we'll get back to it next year. You didn't do that. So no. What did you do? How did you, when the announcement came, schools are closing and we're not coming back after spring break?
Right.
What happened? What were people feeling, and how did you keep everybody focused on the vision?
Right. So, well, first of all, I did not believe that the schools were going to close. Up until the Friday, the Friday, March 13th, I did not believe that the schools were going to close.
Wow.
However, again, being driven by the vision, I'm hearing these different voices in the media, and the teachers, everybody saying, the schools might close. So about a week before, we said, you know what, if schools do close, and at that time people were talking about schools closing maybe for 2 weeks or so. I said, well, our kids have to keep learning and every student needs to keep learning in order for us to have every student meet and exceed state standards. We have to keep this going. So even though I didn't believe the schools were going to close, the week before, I worked with the teachers to have them begin to use Google Classroom and practice with Google Classroom. Some of my teachers had already been using it, but others had never seen it, never worked with it. So we had done a session the Monday before school had closed. We'd done a session where had everybody begin to practice with it, and teachers teaching each other how to set up their classes and so forth. And then we spent the rest of the week where the teachers then taught the children how to get on Google Classroom.
Nice.
And then that Friday, that was our last day of school. And then the Sunday, March 16th was when Sunday, March 15th was when the chancellor and the mayor had announced that schools were shutting down. So again, people were asking, well, what do we do? How do we teach the kids? What are we teaching the kids? So I said to them, well, wait a minute now. What does our vision say? Every student will meet and exceed state standards. So what helped us, the vision helped us in that first we focused on that every student part of the vision. Mm-hmm. So while we worked with the teachers to help them with the professional learning that the city had provided and some other professional learning that we'd already been working with, while the teachers were getting trained, my school aides, my guidance counselor, my parent coordinator, my AP and myself, we worked on that every student's part. So we started distributing books, distributing laptops, going to homes and delivering laptops and delivering books to children and making sure that we were touching every kid. Our guidance counselors worked with the teachers also to make sure that every child's phone number was working, that we had email addresses for every parent. So we focused on that every student part of our vision, because in order to meet that vision, we have to make sure we're in contact with everyone. Yes. So within the first 2 weeks, we had made contact with every child, our children who were living in shelters. Every child was connected to us. And by the end of the third week, every child was connected to some sort of device. We had heard from every family member. And so that was the first thing that helped us. We also created what we call the Champions program, where we took the entire school roster and divided that roster up among all of our staff members and all of our after school staff members. So I'd also cast the vision, just to go back a little bit, I've cast the vision to our after school staff. So everybody who comes to our school to do anything, if you want to sell us a program, if you want to intern, if you want to be a student teacher, whatever it is that you want to do at our school, everybody knows that this is the vision. So our after school staff was already on board. So to talk about the Champions program now, the way that worked was we divided up all of the students among all of the staff and all of our after school staff members. So everybody was assigned between 4 and 5 students. And the idea was that you're to check in with the children on a weekly basis, at least twice a week, check in with your assigned students. So teachers would still work with their classes, but everybody knew that these 5 kids or these 4 kids belonged to me. These are my babies, and I needed to check in with them twice a week. So again, that spoke to that every student's piece, as well as meeting and exceeding state standards, because in the check-ins, are you doing your work? Are you going on Google Classroom? Are you having a problem? Is anybody in your house sick? What is it that we can do to support you and to help you? Now I got some pushback with that, with regards to union and, teachers. The teachers union here is a very strong one. So there were limitations on how many times teachers are required to connect with kids. Oh, that sounds like mentoring. So, teachers don't have to do that. So I didn't fight it. I don't have time to fight with nonsense. So I just said, well, and let me not call it nonsense, because, there are unions for reasons. There's a reason there's a union. So I'll respect the union. But I didn't fight it. I just stepped back. I said, okay, the staff members who want to do this, they can continue to do this. Those who don't want to do this, please let us know. And I will take on more kids. My AP volunteered to take on more kids. And we put it out there. And no one backed out.
Wow.
So, which was really interesting. So, a learning moment there for me also, where perhaps I could have handled it a little differently, just kind of begun with the voluntary piece, but everything was moving so fast, and we just wanted to make sure we weren't losing kids. I think that the final, I guess, most important part, that where the vision anchored us, was then now, as the teachers are learning the technology and feeling overwhelmed by the curriculum, I took up on the 5 outs idea. I didn't bother with the 5 ins. I just focused on the 5 outs, where I said, okay, I sat down with the standards for ELA and the standards for math. I identified, along with my instructional cabinet, we identified the 5 most important standards that if you do nothing else, we're hitting these standards. I don't care what you're doing on Flipgrid or whatever else, whatever it is that you're doing has to hit one of these 5 standards in some way, shape, or form. And I called them the 5 outs for literacy and the 5 outs for math. I was intentional by not calling it 5 outs for ELA, because I wanted to make sure that all of the teachers understood that even in social studies, science, health, PE, in all subject areas, that you're touching the 5 outs for literacy or the 5 outs for math. And that's where that standards part of our vision lived. So that helped us. And that also freed the teachers, where the teachers realized that, okay, as I'm teaching, I just need to be guided by these 5 outs for math and 5 outs for literacy. So as they were working with the different platforms, Flocabulary or Edpuzzle or whatever the platforms they were using, as they were learning the technology, we can also be confident in knowing that the teachers were providing the students with solid instruction that was standards aligned, because they were freed up to just focus on these 5 standards for literacy, and then for math, just these 5 standards for math, and whatever made sense for your subject area. So
you did all of this, right? You have all of this in place. You go through the rest of the year. We never go back to school. At the end of the year, where were you? Where was your school? How did all of this work out for your school?
So at the end of the year, we were able to solidly show that our students were learning during this time, that it wasn't a wash, that those who are promoted to the next grade were promoted fair and square. We were also able to hold students accountable, as well as ourselves accountable, for continuing to support the students who need more time. So we have students who are in summer school, but the evidence is clear as to why they are in summer school, why they are in need of completing what they need to complete in order to show that they are ready to go on into the next grade. I believe that it preserved the culture of our school, because teachers were beginning to wonder, are we just going to scrap all of the hard work that we had done from September until the middle of March? Does that no longer count? And I believe that we're able to show that, no, it still counts. The students and the parents also were able to see very clearly that learning never stopped. That, it was imperfect because internet gives out, laptops are unreliable, the technology is unreliable. However, we were able to still be flexible be flexible with those problems as the families were clear and the children were clear that, no, the vision is still there. Our children are still learning. In terms of formal assessments, we did not have opportunity to be able to do some kind of formal standardized testing. The standardized tests were canceled for the year. But I believe because our vision was grounded in standards and not standardized testing, we did not have significant questions around whether or not it's still worth learning because there's no test. We were able to...
What about that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just saying that we were able to use this opportunity to introduce performance tasks as a better way and a new way to assess the students. So that will be in addition to. So that's how we ended the year in terms of assessing the students and how they're doing with the 5 outs by using performance tasks to assess their progress. And that's something that we're going to continue to use in the coming year. We really just tried to use this as an opportunity to introduce some things that maybe if we did have the standardized tests, we probably wouldn't feel as comfortable to experiment with.
I was going to ask about your staff and how they felt. A lot of schools reported that as distance learning continued throughout the school year, the staff morale fell, stress levels are up. Even now, where people are trying to figure out what school is going to look like in the fall, a lot of people are stressed. A lot of staff members are they have this huge sense of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. How's your staff doing? How did they weather the storm from their own point of view of stress?
Right. So one of the things that we did was it was important to me to make sure that I was touching base with the staff on a regular basis. And so what we had prior to COVID was we had these weekly department meetings. And what was interesting was that before COVID, even though I'd set up these weekly department meetings, I was never able to attend them because the department meetings were during the students' lunchtime and I was always doing lunch duty. So this gave me an opportunity to be a part of the weekly staff meetings and to also just connect with the staff on a regular basis. So what I did was I began to set up those weekly staff meetings, and then that gave me a chance to talk to every teacher every week. Because and then after I did the sprint, I did the sprint that you facilitated. That helped me to build that out. So I created a weekly team meeting, which was small, that would allow me to connect with every single staff member every week. However, it wasn't this whole staff faculty meeting where it's a lot less personal. People can hide behind the muted cameras and what have you. So most of my meetings were no larger than maybe 7 staff members per meeting. So it was a lot for me because every day I'm meeting with a group of people. However, it was just once a week, really, for each staff member. So they were able to hear directly from me. I was able to communicate directly with the staff, from not just me, but my admin team, from me and my assistant principal, where we communicated directly with them. And I think that helped to calm a lot of stress because when rumors came about, we were able to debunk the rumors, or we were able to speak to, well, here's what the chancellor says. Here is the information directly from us. The teachers didn't have to rely on the news media to hear from us. And we were also doing real work. So we were balancing out, wellness check-ins along with doing actual work, looking at student data, looking at student work, looking at our prompts, looking at lesson plans, looking at tasks, and the teachers giving each other feedback, the teachers communicating and collaborating with one another in that fashion. So I think that really helped a great deal for my staff to not have to be as stressed, I guess, as they probably would have been if they didn't have the information. Communicating with them was just so very important, but also hearing from the teachers too. From time to time, I would call the teachers individually and just say, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? For staff members who have small children, I would check in with them. Staff members who had kids who were school age, checking in with them to see, well, how's the homeschooling going? And the feedback that we've received from the staff was that they felt that it helped. It helped a great deal. It helped them to just stay in the loop also, to know what's going on.
So one of the things that you have shared with me is that because your school stayed focused on the vision, you had a different experience during the quarantine than a lot of other schools. What do you mean by that? How was your experience? How do you think your experience was different from other schools because you were so anchored in your vision?
I think one thing that made it different, like all right. So for example, our superintendent would have these fortnightly meetings with the principals in the district just to kind of check in and so forth. And from hearing from some of my colleagues, like there was a lot of resistance, for example, to grading students because they were like, well, no instruction is going on. We can't find the kids. The kids are not connected. And I realized that, oh, wait a minute. No, we can grade the kids. We need to grade the kids. I just took it for granted that instruction was going on until I heard like how some of my colleagues were doing. One school, for example, they were sharing their experience and kind of celebrating the fact that they were at 75% of their students were connecting. Whereas at our school, like on a bad day, we were at 95%. And that was like and again, that's not to make it seem as if we were somehow better than the other schools, because I don't believe that we did anything that an other school could not have done. I think what really differentiated us was the fact that we really had those true north principles. That's what I've been calling them. Those true north principles, our vision, our mission, our core values, in order to guide us through this work, in order to remind us that, this is what we're about. And also to give us permission to let go of some things so that, which is, I think, why we felt so comfortable with the 5 outs, that we're just taking 5 of the standards. There are a whole lot of standards that we're so-called ignoring, but by focusing on these high leverage standards, that gave us some freedom, some breathing room.
So what advice, you're now at the end of the school year, you're looking back. This is your second year being a principal, and you had 2 very different school years. The first school year was just about trying to get the school kind of stabilized.
Right.
The second year, you bring your vision in, you get everybody excited about it and moving. The quarantine happens, but you don't lose the momentum. Mm-hmm. And so it's working for you. What advice would you give somebody else who is starting this journey, who may still be a little skeptical about, do I really need to spend the time on this vision statement? Do I really need to be invested in it? We've got so much else. There are a lot of schools who are still up in the air about how we're going to open. Do I have the time? Do I have the luxury of being able to develop a vision statement right now when there are just so many other pressing issues? What would be your advice to those schools?
Mm-hmm. So my advice would be that you really need to have something that you are anchored in, because you will find that circumstances will try to hijack the direction that the school is going in. Or you may have those who have some sinister or selfish motives who might try to hijack the direction of the school. And if the direction of the school is not crystal clear to everyone, it will be very easy for people to step in, or it will be very easy for you to lose focus. The vision statement, if you do nothing else, I definitely do vision, mission, core values, because it has to, you have to have all 3 of those pieces. But if you do nothing else, you must do that vision statement, and make sure it's a vision statement that you personally can really get behind. If you don't believe in it, it's not going to go anywhere. What drew me to the notion of buildership was that prior to being introduced to your work, I had read a book. I'm sorry, the book is escaping me, but the title is escaping me. It will come back to me. Built to Last. Built to Last. Mm-hmm. And that I determined that I'm going to be a clock builder, because I'd worked with time tellers so the idea about a time teller is somebody who is basically very charismatic. I've worked with very charismatic principals who are the Joe Clarks and what have you, who do this wonderful work. However, when that principal moves off the scene, the school diminishes. Yeah. And the work goes with the person. And I said, no, I'm going to be a clock builder, where when I move on and be the farmer that I was meant to be, because I love gardening, that's my thing, the work doesn't diminish. And when I express that to my staff, to parents, to anybody who will listen, when I express that, I would say to them, who is the principal of Stuyvesant High School, which is, one of the top high schools in New York City, top public high schools in New York City? Nobody knows. Who is the principal for Brooklyn Tech, for Bronx High School of Science? Who is the president of Harvard University? Nobody knows, but you know the work.
Yeah.
So my feeling is you don't need to know my name. You need to know the work. Harvard has changed presidents. I don't know how many times they've changed presidents. And we never know, because the work of Harvard is not so severely impacted by the change of the president. The work remains consistent. And that's what I'm hoping to build at my school, where we're building a school where the work remains consistent. So even if I'm not there, the staff is there, the energy remains. And it begins with that vision statement, and casting that vision and everyone buying into that. That's what provides that sustainability.
I love that. And that's a great way to close. Listen, thank you so much for letting us learn from you today. I am so proud of the work. I hope I can say that. I'm proud of the work that you've done, because you've allowed me to kind of watch it grow over the course of the year. And it blows my mind that this all happened in 1 year. This is not something that took 3, 4, 5 years. You're doing this in 1 year. It's just, it blows my mind. And it also, I think, gives hope to people who think this is a long process and it's going to take, 5 years before you start seeing results. I mean, you came to Builders Lab in July and you had these things set up. And not only that, it got tested early. You didn't even have a whole year to get this established before you faced a huge test. And the things that you established are, they've stood. They withstood a once in a generation, we hope, test. And so I'm so impressed with you, and I appreciate it. I hope that others can hear your story and be inspired, because you're right. They can do the same thing. The tools are there. They can do the same thing that you've done. And so thank you for sharing your story and inspiring us today.
Wasn't that powerful? I mean, her story just blew me away. When I asked her to interview, I had no idea that her story was going to have so many layers. It is truly inspirational, and I hope you were inspired by her story as well. If you would like to learn some of the same strategies that she used, if you would like to create a vision that can drive your school forward, then I invite you to join us for Builders Lab. Because at Builders Lab, we show you the entire buildership process, and we help you build your vision, your mission, your core values, and a plan to carry your school through whatever crisis you face, and to help you turn your school into a success story with the people and resources you already have. So if you'd like to join us for an upcoming Builders Lab, simply go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. That's mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. Hey, if you're ready to get started being a builder right away, then I want to invite you to join us at Buildership University. It's our exclusive online community for builders just like you, where you'll be able to get the exact training that you need to turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Inside, you'll find our best online courses, live trainings with me, tons of resources, templates, and exemplars, and monthly live office hours with me, where you can ask me anything and get my help on whatever challenge you're facing right now. If you're tired of hitting obstacle after obstacle and you're sick of tiny little incremental gains each year, if you're ready to make a dramatic difference in your school right now, then you need to join Buildership University. Just go to buildershipuniversity.com and get started writing your school success story today.